Crime Curious is a true crime podcast that takes an in-depth look into real cases through the lens of a trained investigator and former prosecutor turned judge.
If you are sensitive to expletives, anatomical descriptions, and accurate descriptions of crime scenes, this podcast may not be suitable for you.
Welcome to Crime Curious. I'm Charnell.
And I'm Megan.
Welcome to episode 2, Megan.
I have a beer this time.
Yes, I think that's a good idea. I'm sticking with water because I don't want my throat drying out.
Okay.
But when we're all done recording for the day today,
You might have one.
I will be cracking one open.
This is probably the first time I've had an alcoholic beverage since I got back from vacation. So I had a lot of them on the cruise.
Right. Your liver needed a break.
Took advantage of the drink package.
Yes.
And then I got horribly sick. So
Yeah.
I actually did try to have a beer last night because my husband is sick now. I made soup and then was like, I think I might have a beer with this. It tasted terrible.
Oh,
It doesn't like nothing,
No.
but this is great.
Good.
This is good. I
Plus,
feel better
it's
today.
just numbing out the disgustingness that is David Brown.
I mean, I'm not
we've
saying that
talked
that's
about.
a great coping mechanism,
Right.
but for those of us who don't have any type of an addiction issue, it's my coping mechanism.
That's what's happening. Yes. If you have not listened to part 1, you have to.
Stop the episode immediately.
Yep, and go listen to the previous episode because you've missed so much, literally like from the moment this man was conceived.
If one was
basically.
ever going to think up of an excuse or an explanation as to how somebody's going to perpetrate the awful crimes you're about to tell me about, you have to know who he was up to about age 17.
Yep, exactly. So that's where I'm picking up. We're gonna pick up after his high school experience. I don't even want to call it a career.
Right.
In short, he was right after high school. He was lazy. He couldn't hold down a job.
What?
He's the victim at every job that he gets fired from. It's never his fault. You know, same old from the rest of the earlier parts of his life, right? However, he was dedicated to being the church's Sunday school teacher. Which is a horrifying thought because if you've listened to part 1, you know that he has been convicted of perpetrating sexually and violently.
But it's a juvenile record.
Yep, sure is.
So I bet they knew nothing about it when he applied to be a Sunday.
Who does know about it?
His mom.
His mother. And that's where I have an issue. She knows that he has an affliction for violence against little boys and one little girl that he mistook for a little boy.
She does.
So remember, not only is he deeply religious, but he also thinks that he's God's special helper doing the work of God. Blah, blah, blah. So he's going to go to Bible college in 1976. He went to Valley Forge Christian College. And he actually worked as a night watchman for a moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
What did he watch? Everything.
You know, I'm going to guess that.
Do watchmen have to do, or do they just get to watch?
I think he just gets to watch.
Cool.
It was like
I get
in
paid
front
to
of
be a voyeur.
He was the watchman for like the library or something like that that's closed at night. So he didn't.
I
have
know
to
what
do
job you're
anything,
talking about, and it's
know.
one of those college positions.
Yeah, but one of his
he's weighing in at 400 pounds.
He is,
or close to it, 390 or something.
Yep. There was a moment where some of his students were not his students, but his peers were very disturbed because actually one night at work he cut his eye, and they found him in the bathroom. It was like an accident. He walked into something, cut his eye. They found him in the bathroom stitching himself up in the mirror.
Ooh.
Right? Like that's a whole different level.
It's either creepy or badass depending on what your circumstances are.
This guy's creepy. This is not Bruce Willis.
No, it's not. Bruce is just fallen partway down a skyscraper and he gets out a needle of thread and says, I got
it's fine. That is badass and a bit of a turn on. This is creepy.
No, this is Fat Bastard from Austin Powers.
Yes.
With a needle.
Yes. Poking his own belly button
while
and
he's
picking his scabs and
yeah,
eating
while
it.
he's stroking other things.
Don't forget about that. His affinity for picking his
picking
own
and
body
eating.
and
I know.
eating it. All right.
It's honestly a disorder, you guys. But
It is. Wow. It is. All right. So college does not last long because he was constantly interrupting the church services and the lectures to tell them how wrong all their teachings were because he was God's special helper and he knew better. He had the better answer.
This is at the Christian college he's attending?
Yes, it is. He also never showered and changed clothes, so that was a disruption for others as well. So he was kicked out. Not because of the interruptions, the hygiene, and also because his grades sucked.
Oh, okay.
He knew better, but he just wouldn't do his work. Yep. He told his mom and everyone else that would listen that his professors were jealous of his relationship with God and that he knew more than they did, so he was let go. They were intimidated by his special relationship and how he knew more about the Bible than they did, and that their teachings were wrong, so they had to boot him. Yep. So, delusional, narcissistic. Here we are. Basically, I was let go for being too smart.
I hate when that happens.
Mm-hmm.
I've been there, David.
Right. It's a tragedy. It really is. No, because it's not a thing. It's a thing if you live in victimhood. Okay.
I've quit because I'm too smart.
Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, I've walked out of rooms because I was getting dumber by the moment. But yeah.
I've decided I want to hang out with you anymore because, well, my brain works.
Yeah.
But you have a good day with yours.
Good luck with that.
Yeah.
Good luck with that frontal lobe, David. That, by the way, is not firing at all neurologically.
I couldn't imagine being in a class. I took some religion classes. I went to a small Christian liberal arts school where people would say some pretty just unknowingly offensive things because that's how they were raised. Mm-hmm. And I was raised in a relative, I guess it wasn't. I mean, I was spiritual. We were raised in a Christian household, but it wasn't like beat at me or anything. No. And so I wanted to walk out of class on more than one occasion, but instead I think I sat there with, the Megan look where I'm like, it's the reason that I have the wrinkles on my forehead and like the creases in between my eyes because I do look at people like that all day.
I've seen it. My favorite is when there was this one particular defense attorney that none of us enjoy, and I was on the stand and she said something stupid and you gave her that look and she looked at you giving her that look and then went and sat down. Because she knew her question was stupid.
Oh, it's my face. I don't
it's
know.
my face.
I know. Somebody said the other day, they're like, "Are you okay?" I said, "That's my actual face. It's fine. Yeah. I always look like this."
So here he is. He's nearly he is 400 pounds. He's over 400 pounds at this point in time. And obviously he goes back home to live with his mother. This is difficult for his mom financially to keep him fed. And especially because he was addicted to fast food and demanded it. And we know how Tyra goes with his demands, right?
So he's living on the McDonald's.
He is. He starts hanging around at flea markets, and an old woman took him under her wing and taught him how to haggle for a deal.
Cool.
Right?
Way to make friends, Dave.
Yeah. This poor unsuspecting old woman.
An old vulnerable woman at a flea market.
At a flea market. So he set up his own tent at the market for kids' antique toys, Megan. And he had a cardboard sign in there advertising his new endeavor, babysitting services.
Nope.
Yep.
Nope.
Yeah. I know. I told you. It just keeps getting worse. On September 24th, 1977, he set his tent up, put on his police uniform. Remember from episode 1 how he likes to impersonate a police officer. And he approaches 2 kids named Billy and Alan. They were on their bike. He rolled up next to them and demanded to know their names. He lectured them on being out so late, even though it was 8 o'clock, and demanded that they get in his car so that he can take them home. When they do, he immediately trigger alert to child abuse. He immediately hits Alan and bloodies his nose. The boys are telling him that they didn't do anything wrong as he drove them around and was really trying to figure out what his plan is.
How long do you think these poor kids thought a police officer was mad at them and assaulted them?
Right. I don't know.
It hurts. I'm hurt.
He handcuffs them behind their backs and then tells Billy to get into a green duffel bag that he pulled out of the trunk of the vehicle. The boy tells him that he's too big to get into a duffel bag And David told him that he'd cut his legs off if he didn't get into it. But then he can eventually see that Billy is right and that he can't, in fact, fit into the duffel bag.
He failed geometry.
He had no plan. You know what I mean? He has no plan. So he becomes violent. He throws the bag out the window, is beating Billy. And then he takes the boys to his merchant tent where he ties them up. And he tries to get them to remove their clothing, but they refused. So he unties them and throws them in the back seat of the car again, one on top of the other. And then he pulls Alan out of the car by the hair and starts to beat him and then choke him. He's even bouncing up and down on the child's chest in an attempt to kill him. I mean, he's 400 pounds.
Yeah.
Okay. He was laying on the ground and sees David. I'm sorry. I skipped I went to go reading my, yes.
It's because she wasn't reading. She was going off of memory and had to look back.
He had to start reading.
I watched you.
So Alan is laying on the ground. He sees David go back to the car to get Billy out of the back seat. Now, he could hear him beating Billy this entire time. And then he hears him put Billy into the trunk. And Alan watches as David drives away with his friend in the trunk. So Alan gets up to go get help. This flea market was next to an Assembly of God building.
Yep. I'm familiar with those. We have one of those here.
We do. And so he goes and gets help from George Nickerson, who was the youth director of the Royal Rangers, which was like, I think even a part of this flea market. Okay. Like their youth program or whatever. So this George Nickerson calls the police. Alan describes to the police what had happened and who had done it. David, in the meantime, is driving around with Billy in the trunk, trying to figure out what to do. Nothing had gone to plan because he really didn't have a freaking plan. So an officer named Officer Stearns saw his car and started to chase him. Of course, David thinks that he's Vin Diesel and that he can outrun a police officer.
You Fast and Furious, Jim.
Right. He does not, just so you know. Billy is rescued alive at 12:40 a.m. So this is from approximately 8 p.m. to 12:40 that these boys literally lived a hell on earth.
And they were assaulted, but they weren't actually sexually assaulted.
They weren't because they refused to take their clothes off.
Well, he wanted them to sexually assault each other.
And he was going to sexually assault them. Yep.
But they wouldn't take their clothes off. And he...
So instead, he just physically
beat
assaulted
the shit out of them.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
He wants compliance.
Yeah. Well, he's arrested.
Okay.
And
good.
Yeah. And he actually gave a full confession. I mean, kind of.
Oh, God. How is he the hero in this story?
Well, he gave the full confession as if he was a police officer writing a police report who had just come upon the crime scene. It was fucking bananas.
BANANAS?
Yes. Yes, Gwen.
What the hell?
Yeah.
They've literally got a report that he's the guy that did this. And he's like, so I'm Officer David and I came upon these two children.
Yep. And it was... I decided not to read it. It's in the books if you want to read it.
Okay.
It's extremely long, but it's also really hard to follow. Like it would
yeah, because it's not real.
Yeah, in an in the platform of audio that we deliver to people, it just jumps all around.
Doesn't translate.
No, and what it boils down to is he's acting like he is the police officer, but then the next moment he slides into, and then I did this. Like it was bizarre. It was just, I mean, just absolutely bizarre.
Well, he's building an interesting defense.
Right. So he's charged with 2 counts of kidnapping, 2 counts of attempted murder, and impersonating a police officer, and failure to stop, because when they gave chase, he didn't, they chased him all around. He didn't
Which
stop.
is probably actually our version of a felony, fleeing and eluding. Right. But failure to stop is a civil infraction here, so that's why we find it funny. Yes. Give him an impeding traffic.
Give him, right.
Just dismiss all the felony charges and have him pay the $85 ticket. You know,
yeah,
plea agreements happen.
It really was, referring to how he did not stop when they were trying to pull him over the fleeing. Yeah. So he was ordered to get a psychiatric evaluation. The psychiatrist who does this is a man named Stephen Cronin, who does end up being the chief of forensic psychiatry at Bridgewater State Hospital in Massachusetts, where David will eventually end up.
Okay.
But Anyway, the interview with David was ended by Dr. Cronin only 30 minutes into it because, quote, he clearly acknowledges that he has trouble controlling his impulses towards young boys. He also acknowledges that 2 years prior to these charges, he was arrested on similar ones. There is no evidence to support the possibility that he enters any type of dissociative state, end quote. In
So he's
other
not
words,
blacking out.
He's not blacking out. He's not going to entertain his lies and attempts at manipulation at all. He is competent and needs to be held accountable.
Good.
So the police went to interview him for a real confession, and he is asked about a girl named Susan.
Is Susan the little girl on the bike?
No. Susan's been missing since 1974. Remember in episode 1 how I said that there is just no way between the ages of 13 and 15 that he didn't. Yep. So here we are. She was riding her bike, and her bike was found a few days later. And then after her bike was found, her battered body was found. A witness at the time recalled seeing a very large fat man leaning against a green car.
But it could have been a fat boy.
Exactly. He did not look like a boy at that point in time. Yes, David did have access to a green car in 1974 as one of his parents' vehicle. Okay. And the other thing that I haven't really mentioned yet, just because it's so common at the time, was that David started smoking when he was like 13 or something like that, you know. So
Mom and Dad usually smoked. The packs were there. They didn't even think anything of it when the kids picked up a cig.
Right. So a witness at the time, like I said, had saw this large man leaning against this green car, smoking a cigarette right next to where Susan's bike was found. The thing is, Susan's panties were never found. She had been bonded with white bandage tape, and she had been strangled with severe head trauma. So,
was she sexually assaulted?
Yes. There were never any more leads that led to any sort of arrest, okay? And in 1974, he was in high school. So when the police decided to take this opportunity to question him about Susan, he said, quote, "Oh, you mean that girl that was killed with a large rock and bound in tape?" End quote. Yeah, I heard about her. But then he denied having anything to do with it. Mm. The only problem is the police had never disclosed any of those details to the public. So they get a search warrant because they're like,
you know things you shouldn't know.
Exactly. They get a search warrant for his home. The problem with this is that they called Tyra ahead of time.
No. Tyra's going to get rid of evidence.
And she did. She allegedly.
Allegedly.
I'll say it. Allegedly. She tells them that she'll be home later. Like, yeah, you can come.
No.
I'm not home right now.
That's not how search warrants work. You go do it right away. Mm-hmm. You don't care if someone's home.
When they entered the home, it had clearly been very recently immaculately cleaned. The hood of her car was still warm, and no one questioned Tyra where she had been and what she had done that day, and they did not search her car.
Tyra, who are you actually protecting here?
Yeah. December 14th.
Was her car green?
No, not at that time. It's the white one.
Okay. Because I would have had a search warrant for that,
This is years
too.
later.
Sure it is.
Right. Yes, they should have had a search warrant for Tyra's car. Absolutely. He used her car to perpetrate on these two boys.
Yeah, but you have to have probable cause, and in that specific car, there might not have been PC for.
Well, and he had also admitted to 2 years prior perpetrating in her car.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's true. I would have just gone and written search warrants for any vehicles on the premises as well, since there were allegations that the crimes had been perpetrated in a vehicle, any appurtenances, any, sheds and anything like that on the property as well. Excuse me.
So December 14th, 1977, he pleads guilty to kidnapping and attempted murder, but the confession reads still like he was a trooper on duty. It never changes.
You are not a law enforcement officer,
No.
David.
No. So he was sentenced to the
Why isn't this guy being charged with impersonating a police officer? Was that not a charge then?
It was. No,
was that included? Okay.
Yeah. But what he pleads guilty to is the kidnapping and attempted murder.
Well,
still trying to impersonate.
Those are both life offenses. And they are here. I don't know if kidnapping is
not in Massachusetts at this time.
Punishable up to. It's usually kidnapping is life or any term of years is how it reads.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you, he was sentenced to the max sentence for Massachusetts
So
at
it
the
wasn't
time.
life. It was
18
like
to 20.
18 to 20.
And spent the first 2 years at a prison, but kept petitioning to be sent to Bridgewater State Hospital because he knew that environment was less restrictive, because he had been receiving letters from a friend that he met in prison who was transferred to Bridgewater. And they have those letters, and those letters are like, yeah, it's way better here. You should get transferred here.
Do you mean to tell me David is finally in an environment where he can make friends?
Yep. In prison is where his friends are. Oh, I have a strap in, honey. We got a long ride ahead of us.
I'm just gonna pull this up and get the straps adjusted. Okay.
So for the sake of time, I'm going to cut to the chase.
Okay.
What happens is that his mother petitions to have him transferred from prison to Bridgewater State Hospital. So he goes there in 1979, and then she starts writing the doctors there, pleading for his sentence to be reduced on grounds of diminished capacity. And what ends up happening is that the doctors there say, okay, but he has to serve 10 years first before he can be eligible for parole. Okay? At parole hearings, Tyra had Christian psychiatrists. She hired them herself to work with David. And basically what happens is the Bridgewater psychiatrists go up against the Christian psychiatrists that are hired by Tyra, and they go back and forth between he's fine, he's not fine, he's fine, he's not fine. And he kept making up elaborate and detailed stories of sex crimes that the guards were putting him through, just like the same story that he constantly told that happened to him.
Friend.
Yep, when he was 10 and his 8-year-old friend in the woods that never happened. He was not sexually assaulted by
guards in prison.
No, first of all, this man stunk so bad, you guys. Like, that theme is so prevalent amongst this research that, like, I think that if there were guards that were perpetrators there, they likely would have picked a victim that was, first of all, more clean. Second of all, not 400 pounds that couldn't fight back. Like, essentially, if you're a perpetrator, you're not going for the biggest guy in the room.
I wouldn't think.
Typically. Okay? Allegedly.
But he's continuously glorifying being the victim of a criminal sexual assault.
Always. Yes. He told the Christian psychiatrist that he had found Jesus as his savior, and they bought into it, saying that he was not a threat to society.
No.
Those reports are on record.
These cases are so hard for me because I know we have a lot of people of different denominations and spiritual persuasions that listen to this. I'm a Christian, and it always bothers me and hurts my soul when somebody takes it and perverts it like that. And I have often taken issue with certain Christian psychologists, psychiatrists, and counselors for those reasons as well. Yeah. I think you can be a psychiatrist or a psychologist and have a religious persuasion of any kind,
right,
Christian or otherwise. But when that is your first and foremost in your counseling with somebody like this, oh my God, just the manipulation they don't even recognize.
Yes, you have to use discernment.
Yeah.
You have to be able to discern. And if you can't separate your religion from assessment tools, diagnoses, things like that.
We have to do it all the time in our jobs.
Then it is a problem. So Tyra was 61 when David went to prison. She drove 180 miles round trip at least once a week during what ends up being his 15 years of imprisonment. Okay.
Do his siblings go visit him?
No. When he was released, after 2 doctors who were later found to not use any real reasoning in their assessment tools recommended his release as a non-threat, he calls his mom June 28th, 1991, demands that she buy him a new suit and to come and get him because he's being released. At this time, Tyra is 76 years old, and when she showed up, he had accumulated through the 15 years in imprisonment, but really at Bridgewater for the most part. He had accumulated all kinds of, first of all, he had been writing back and forth with pen pals. He had all of that saved. He had been doing all of his religious research. He had all of that saved. His own legal research. And so there's boxes and boxes of accumulation, and he gets into the car, sits in the front seat, and makes his 76-year-old mother put all those boxes into the vehicle. A guard watching nearby, felt sorry for her, and did help her load them. But David was not willing because he had been through enough. Then, on the way home, it's 180 miles. On the way home, he demanded that she stop at every fast food place that they saw. And each time he ordered 3 burgers, 3 fries, and 3 shakes and ate them in one sitting.
He was hungry. He'd been in prison a long time.
I feel like he can only be described as like Mother Nature's one regret. Like, don't you think? Like, we all have that one regret in life. And I think for sweet, beautiful Mother Nature, she's like, ooh, yeah, wasn't on my A game that day.
Right?
This is my one regret. Yeah.
And God's up there going, oh, and devil's down there going, not it. Like,
yeah, I didn't even do this.
Like,
yeah.
we don't know where he came from.
God's like, nope, not me. Devil's like, nope, not me. And Mother Nature's like, shit.
I just love it when these Christian psychologists with no basis, just basically their own subjective opinions, decided he was okay to get out because he found Jesus, who apparently to some people like is literally hiding like in your closet or under your mattress, and that's where he must have found him, because nothing. To find Jesus, that would be expressed in your actions,
right,
and in your doings and in your deeds. But he was able to find Jesus by talking and manipulation, and that's not where Jesus is.
Where Jesus lives.
No, it's not where Jesus lives.
Sure isn't. I mean, he preached the gospel in prison, during his time incarcerated, but he also just remained, as he always has, a demanding, narcissistic, entitled, egotistical asshole.
And he was the expert.
Yes.
In that.
Right.
No, wow.
So August 9th, 1991, just 43 days after his release, he perps again.
Shocking.
So guess those doctors were wrong. That literally wrote in the report, not a threat to society.
No, because he found Jesus and then he put him back under the mattress.
Yep.
With
he
his
found
crucifix.
Jesus and then he put him back in the genie's bottle.
Correct.
All right. So he's on an afternoon stroll to the local school's playground where he liked to lurk.
I was just going to say, come on. How come he is allowed around this is before sex offender registration.
Yeah, it's 1991.
Oh, no, there was some Sora.
There was, but he isn't being monitored.
Okay.
Megan?
Like, you can't be by a park. You can't be by a school.
No.
Don't teach Sunday school.
You know what he liked to do? He liked to pretend like he was the school crosswalk officer. The school didn't hire him.
He'd just go stand there?
He'd just go and stand and help the kids across the street. But he liked to lurk throughout the day. He had the playground schedules memorized, so he would just go and stand and lurk. Well, he was walking through a shortcut that he takes, which is through the post office parking lot. When there he saw 7-year-old Michael sitting in the back seat waiting for his mother, who was inside.
Oh, my God.
And I'm about to paint a picture, sister.
Okay, I know. I feel it coming.
Wearing a coonskin hat.
Michael is?
No, David is.
Oh, I'm like, that's adorable.
Of course it is. No, it's David.
David is wearing, there's a 400-pound man with a coonskin cap.
He is now 275 pounds.
Oh, he was in prison. He lost 100 pounds.
He did. He lost weight. So he's wearing himself a coonskin hat. And I wrote in my notes, I had to include it to paint a picture. He gets into the back seat and proceeds to just sit on the child.
He just sat on him?
Sat on him, smothering the child with his chest. I don't know. Michael's mother thankfully saw this.
What type of a sex act is that?
I think it's just violence, Megan. I think it's just violent. And the boy remembers, he's a survivor.
Oh my God.
And he remembers how sweaty and yucky and musty smelling, because it was also raining that day.
Yeah.
That his shirt was, and he was literally like suffocating on it.
Yeah, smushed by the blob.
Yep. Yeah, he was suffocating on it. So luckily, Michael's mother saw this, and she was reported by a witness to have all but tore the hinges off the car door. She whipped it open so fast and just went to town beating on the bastard.
You got it right.
Yep.
That is a justifiable assault. You can come to the defense of others. This is my legal opinion at this point in time. And at this point in time,
and she does.
Any assault is justified.
Yeah, she is beating on him. David starts...
Deadly force would have been appropriate there. He was smothering her child.
Yeah, but she's in the post office. I mean, I imagine she's got her purse.
They don't like it when you bring guns in there.
Yeah, you're not allowed to do that.
No.
So he starts screaming screaming because she's beating
I'm
on
being
him
assaulted.
that he was just trying to get out of the rain.
Oh, he didn't realize there was a kid in there?
I didn't realize I was sitting on this child. 275 pounds is not that large for a dude.
You were breaking in my car, man.
Like, I mean, not to say it's not large, but like, you're not so large that you can't see when you're sitting on a child.
Correct. I know plenty of 275-pound men who may be carried a little differently than he does, but they aren't even, you wouldn't even know.
No, you have no, exactly. That was my point too. You would have no idea that that's their actual weight. We call that well stacked. So
I've been told.
So police find his ass that day. She describes them. They know exactly who they're freaking looking for.
Just got released from prison. Let's go find
43 days
David.
ago. Mm-hmm. So they find him sitting on his mother's couch eating some mac and cheese that when he came home, he demanded his mommy make for him.
Oh my God.
76-year-old mother make
wedding
for
singer.
him.
Or, yeah, the Wedding Crashers. Mom!
Yeah.
Give me the meatloaf!
Mom!
I want the meatloaf, Mom!
He's in his fucking 40s at this point in time.
Yeah,
like,
it's Will
let's
Ferrell's
put this
character.
into perspective.
Ma!
Yep. So
I'm sorry, my lungs are objecting right now. Okay, I'm alive.
Okay. He told them the same thing, that he was just trying to get out of the rain. Michael was a bit banged up with a bloody nose and was traumatized, but other than that, he was going to be okay.
Dude, can you imagine your day? He got sat on.
Right.
He got sat on. He got crushed. I know as a little person, this is something you're probably nervous about all the time.
I have to tell you, people do it to be funny to me, and sometimes I do enter a little bit of panic of like, oh fuck, I would be screwed.
I've never felt like I was being crushed before.
No, it is
or
terrifying.
thought, oh my gosh, I hope I don't get crushed.
Or even sometimes my poor husband, I'm like, I know you're being cute here, maybe even a little sexy, but like, you got to carry some of your own weight.
Use your thighs, man.
Right. Then those knees.
Put the knees into it. I was just going to say that.
Yeah.
Oh, hell.
So one police officer did recognize his description from 15 years earlier and from the Observer, and that's how they were able to locate him so quickly.
Eating the mac and cheese.
Yep. So this is how this situation is handled.
Okay.
The judge ordered a stay away order. From your face right now as a judge.
That's just a PPO.
He's not allowed in Oxford, Massachusetts. He has to stay away. We only care about the children in Oxford, Massachusetts. You have to stay away from there.
Do you know how many times I've thought about, we can't do this. It's not legal. Just saying, okay, now you have to leave the state of Michigan and never come back.
That would be great.
That's basically what they did.
Oh, don't worry. That happens. Hold on. Hold on to your robes, Judge Megan, because we're about to get into it even more.
This is incredible.
He even had a written confession admitting that he intended to kill Michael. But what happens is that he is seen in front of one judge who issues a psychiatric evaluation before making a final determination. Okay, that's what one judge ordered. Okay. And then somehow wires got crossed in administration and he gets seen in front of another judge the next day. And that judge immediately sends him to probation. He is not even considered for a prison sentence. He is not ordered by that judge to do a psychological evaluation. Didn't know that he had been seen the day before from a previous judge. And so they put stipulations on, we will release you into the care of your mother with this deal. If you move him, this is something that Tyra worked out too. If you move him to Montana, where there's
no children there.
None. Not that I know of.
No kids in Montana.
Because brother Bob lives in Montana. So between 76-year-old Tyra, mom, and brother Bob, they are going to watch over in Montana this pedophile and attempted murderer, David Brown.
BB.
Yep, BB nuts. Good old BB nuts. Okay, now I want to title the episode that.
Good old BB nuts.
Good old BB nuts. Yeah. They say, like, and what's supposed to happen, Megan, as you know, being in the justice system, in order to do this, they would have to get Montana's permission.
For if he's being overseen there.
Yep. If that is where they are ordering him, if that's part of the plea deal of I'm going to move to Montana and I'm going to do my probation that you're ordering for me into Montana, Montana has to accept it.
They do.
And Montana has to know all the crimes that the person's committed before making that determination.
Usually, yes.
This is the important part. Also, he's a parole sex offender. Keep in mind, you guys, he did all this while on parole.
Yeah.
From being released for 15 years.
Send him back to prison on a
Right?
parole violation.
Right?
Massachusetts.
It's been 43 days since he's been released. No. So, which I think is where the other judge was going with the psychiatric evaluation and then sending him back to prison.
Yes.
But this judge that they got the next day didn't know that that's what was going on. And so it's just like, oh, okay, parole violation. You're going to, you guys are willing to move to Montana? We're going to issue an order saying you're not allowed in Oxford and you're going to take your mom. You're going to go to Montana. But it's very important that you do this. When you leave this courtroom, you go down to our probation office and you report to them because they need to contact Montana and get this ball rolling.
Do you know how many times people refuse to accept that invitation?
Like every time?
A lot.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah. It's like during COVID when I was like, okay, so you need to report to jail from Zoom at like 5 p.m. And then they don't.
Yeah.
And then I see them later when they get picked up on my warrant. I'm like, so
Right.
what happened? Well, I was driving back from Coldwater. I'm like, well, it's a long drive. I hear it takes 3 weeks to get here.
Right. Maybe by wagon.
Yeah. No,
So,
not even.
Here we are. Needless to say, Tyra.
Are we moving to Montana?
And David, they do not go and report to probation. That's a key component in this.
Right.
Just to understand. They don't report to probation, but they do take the opportunity to say, let's get the hell out of Dodge. They absolutely are going to move to Montana with Bobo.
Brother doesn't care for, Bob doesn't like David.
Brother is not loving this situation.
Are they moving in with him?
Not yet.
Okay.
Just give me a second. He and his 76-year-old mother pack her car, pulling a U-Haul full of all of his junk antique toys because remember how he got thrown in prison? Yeah, he was a flea market tentor.
You are not going to operate your flea market as part of your probation, David.
Well, his mom held on to all of his junk antique toys for 15 years while he was incarcerated.
I'm sorry.
So they rent this U-Haul and they have all of his boxes of all of his writings, his scripture writings from prison, all of his pen paling. Okay. And they have to drive from Massachusetts to Montana. But wait for it. Here it comes. They have to go way out of their way to Arkansas first. What's in Arkansas, you might be
I
asking?
do, because that's super far south.
Sure is. Well, David's got to meet the woman that he's going to marry.
Oh, he met her in prison as a pen pal.
A pen pal named Sandy, who's about 10 years older than him.
Okay.
Yep. It's going to take him about a week to get there because he makes his mom stop at all the flea markets so that they can continue to add to his junk pile in that U-Haul. And, of course, a ton of fast food stops. His mother, his 76-year-old elderly mother, drove the entire way because he had a headache. So,
I must come to my bride looking my best.
Yes.
I shall not have a headache.
I cannot be driving. You peasant.
How about a shower, David? That's a start.
Maybe.
Look at the way your dog just looked at me.
She's like, you judgmental bitch. I haven't had a shower since my last groom.
You don't have to have a shower. You look great.
She's gorgeous. All right. So they left Arkansas, or they left on their way. They left Massachusetts to Arkansas.
Okay.
On August 29th, 1991. And they get there a week later. They meet Sandy. Needless to say, everyone, Sandy's a bit surprised by the look of David because he hadn't exactly been honest about his description.
What?
And she had seen a photo, but it was like the selfie from the head up type photo. So she was taken aback by his
But she's
look.
aware of what he's in there for. A lot of women are when they meet their prison pen pals.
She's only aware of what David has told her.
Okay.
Let's keep that in mind.
This wasn't like looking things up on Vine Link here now where you can see what people are in.
Exactly. And I did forget to mention, mostly because I don't care, but it was during his prison time of over those 15 years, sometime in the 80s, I think it was like 88, 87, something like that, is when he officially changed his name to Nathaniel Benjamin Levi-Bar Jonah, because he decided that he was Jewish.
While he was in prison.
While he was in prison, and because he was God's special helper.
I apologize to those of you out there of the Jewish faith that somebody did this
For sure.
in the name of your religion.
Yep. Exactly.
And perverted Judaism in some type of way. I am sorry to all of you.
It's
It is
terrible.
no direct reflection.
And I am not calling him Nathaniel Benjamin Levi-Bar
sorry.
Jonah.
I have to stop now. So what you're telling me is he convinced the psychologist that he found Jesus, even though Jews don't recognize he was Jewish, but he wasn't the Lord and Savior.
There we go.
So he's a little confused in his religious attributes, isn't he?
I would say
I found Jesus, but he's not the King of the Jews, and he's not a Christian Savior.
Correct. Over all of this, that's exactly what I was thinking too. Like, wait a minute.
I can't even right now.
His mom hired these Christian psychiatrists.
To a man who converted to
Judaism. Yep. So,
I'm
I
just sorry.
I don't give
anybody here who is devoutly faithful. This has no reflection on you at all.
No, absolutely not.
What a perversion.
I frankly don't give a fook what this guy thinks that his name is. He's a genetic mutation.
Did this have something to do though with his girlfriend? Like, was there some type of a religious connection there?
Not at all.
Okay.
No.
So, but he had changed his name. She thought she was meeting whatever Bar Jonah.
Yeah, she thought she was meeting Nathan Benjamin Levi-Bar Jonah. Yes, the Lord and Savior himself, basically.
Oh God.
Okay. It's Jewish.
Right.
That hasn't come yet.
Right.
It's odd. It's a very odd culmination.
No, well, it's because he wasn't there yet.
Yes.
He's the guy. He's the one that needs to go. He's their Jesus.
He
did find Jesus.
He did.
It was him.
The whole time. I was here the whole time. So they roll up to Arkansas.
Okay.
And Sandy has 2 boys, 8 and 10.
That's why he wants you.
Exactly. Those are, David even wrote in a letter that, oh my gosh, those are my favorite ages.
Ew. Oh my God. And she didn't know what he was in there for?
No. They live in a trailer in Arkansas, which means that there's not a lot of room for the boys, Sandy, David, and Tyra. So he offers to stay in the boys' room with them in their bunk beds because, no premarital coital relations are allowed in the eyes of God, Megan.
Not with women.
Nope. So Tyra had to sleep
or on adults.
Well, and he's using his religious, manipulations here. We can't sleep together.
And
Sandy.
His mom is still, this old woman is still okay with all of this. She's taking him there. She's staying there.
She's sleeping on the couch. While David is agreeing or is suggesting that he sleep with her children. So long story short, though, Sandy gets the vibe. And she sends her kids to a relative. A week after they arrived, she finally says, you know what, David?
It's not going to work out.
Love your mama, but this isn't going to work out. Yep. So there were, in my understanding, there were still nights that he did sleep in the bunk bed with the boys. But it was short-lived, and she sent them to a relative's house. Basically, at that point, probably just trying to figure out how the fuck to get rid of them.
And I wonder if they've never reported any type of sexual abuse.
No.
That we're aware of.
Not that I know. And she was interviewed for this book,
sure.
as well. The whole time, like, he was demanded to be fed by her, like on an infant feeding schedule. Okay.
Oh, well, he was testing her wifey skills out.
He refused to shower or brush his teeth, and she could see how he treated his mother. And so all of those things, coupled with the fact that in my notes, it said he did spend 2 nights with the boys, and something that Sandy said in her interview, she will always ask the Lord's forgiveness for. But, there's a lot that can be said there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll just leave it hanging. It takes them weeks to get to Great Falls, Montana. They made a lot of stops where David would go out for hours at night unexplained and come back sweaty and gross. We will never know, but the question will always remain of who else did he harm on the way out to Montana.
Right.
Finally, mid-September, remember they left August 28th. They arrive in Great Falls, Montana. His brother Bob helps
So they take over 2, maybe 3 weeks to get there.
Yeah. His brother Bob helps unload the U-Haul, which was mostly David's scattered writings.
I would have burned the fucker.
Well, by the way, he was going to be a journalist. So that's why because Bob was like, why do we have this stuff? And he's like, well, I'm going to be a journalist. These are all my writings from my time at Bridgewater. So there was also a bunch of broken toys for his antique shop that he was going to open. Bob suggested that they throw it all away, and this upset, tender feelings of Captain Sweaty Pits. And so they got into a fight like right off the bat when
Captain
he first
BB
arrived.
Nuts?
Yes.
Captain
Good
BB
old
Nuts.
BB Nuts. At this point in time, he is 34 years old. My apologies. I said earlier he was in his 40s. That comes later.
So he was in his 30s.
He was in his He was 34 at this time.
It happens. And correction made.
Yes, Bob was reaming his ass about how he needed to take responsibility. Like, you're 34 years old.
Is Bob married, or does he have a family at this
Bob
point?
does. Yep. At this point.
Does he have any boys?
No.
Okay.
Not that I know of. Not that was mentioned. He is married, but he does end up divorced.
Oh.
But
Can't imagine this wasn't stressful on the marriage.
Oh, well, that's just it. As soon as they arrived and they started unloading their stuff, because Bob has rentals, so that is where they're having a place to live, is in one of Bob's rentals, okay? And instead of helping unload his stuff, he wanted the U-Haul unhitched because he wanted immediately to take his mother's car and drive around. So he couldn't drive the 3 weeks that it took them to get there because he had a headache, but immediately when they get there, he can suddenly drive. He's fine enough to drive, right?
Oh, it happens all the time.
Yeah, he makes his rounds.
It's a miracle.
I'm healed.
I've been healed.
I'm healed. He makes his rounds, and he ends up making friends at a local antique mall. And he had mapped out all the local schools that were on his way there. He found he actually really liked Montana because the schools were much more conveniently located than they are back east, because it took a lot of time and traffic to get from one to the other.
Yeah.
Not in Montana.
No, there might be a stray bull. But.
So this I couldn't find a lot of information on, but he ends up getting $6,000 from the state of Massachusetts because of something to do with his time at Bridgewater. Like, I don't even know what all that entails, of how
There's a settlement of some kind.
there was, and I don't know, but he gets $6,000.
But it's too bad that wasn't immediately confiscated and turned over to the victims for restitution.
right.
And court fines and costs and all of those good things.
Oh no! Instead, he bought up some guy's entire inventory of junk to rent his own space at the antique mall, and then the very next day asks Bob for $50. And Bob's like, why do you need $50? You just got $6,000. He's like, oh no, I spent all that on buying up my inventory.
Then no.
Right.
Someone tell this man no.
It just doesn't happen. All right. So he did report to probation in Montana to Officer Michael Redpath, who was like, hey, who the F are you and what the F is going on? They weren't expecting him.
No, because he never reported to probation there for them to transfer.
So they didn't know. Yep. And furthermore, Michael Redpath is like, not only were we not expecting you, but we never would have taken you.
No, we don't
either.
accept that. That's common. You don't do that very often.
Yep. So it's going to take some time before parole officer Redpath here can even get the information that he needs to even know what he's dealing with. But here he is in Montana, living in Montana, right? It would take a while before he's really put into contact with Massachusetts. And when they do contact them, or, Massachusetts, the only information that Montana gets is that he attacked a 7-year-old in the post office parking lot.
You sit on him?
Mm-hmm. When he was in Oxford. Montana does not know his entire story in Massachusetts because Oxford never even knew it all before he was banned and left. Yeah.
He has got to be getting something out of this sitting on people crushing.
Oh,
and
most
things.
definitely.
There has to be a sexual motivation.
There is a power and control, because that's really what he's lacking through all of this to his ego. He is nobody. He has no power. That's why he likes impersonating a police officer, someone in authority.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Officer Redpath, or parole officer Redpath, does inform other local officers about him and was like, be on the lookout with this guy.
Fucking weird, and he's crazy. Yeah.
And now I'm about to make you dislike Tyra, I think, a little bit.
I didn't like Tyra much before Charnell.
Well, now it's gone. It's going to be gone. Because
Okay.
January 1992, she suggests to David that he take up babysitting since he likes kids so much.
No, Tyra, no.
Can we try to say...
Do you think there's anything just misfiring? Does she not believe that there's any sexual motivation?
I think she's believing every word that her son has said his entire life and not able to pick up on the manipulation and the victimhood that he keeps himself in.
Does Bob have any objections to this?
Yeah, Bob doesn't like this, but Bob is, 36 or 7 at this point in time. And I mean, he moved to Montana. How much more of a sign is it that he wants to be?
I'm sorry, Mom. If you're suggesting that my brother babysit kids after he's attempted to abuse them and kill them, get out of my house.
Let's be fair to Bob. How do we know that Bob even knew any of the stories?
Do people not know?
It's 1992.
Okay.
They can't get the information except for
Google
whatever.
is not readily accessible.
What his mother is telling him, right? And it's not being, half of the shit's not even being reported.
Yeah.
So, I think Bob likely had no real understanding.
That must be it.
So, he does start to babysit.
Okay.
An 8-year-old boy for his friend. A friend he met at the flea market. He was alone a lot with this child. This friend's name was Jenny. All right. She gets herself a boyfriend, and through the boyfriend did not like David being around the child. The boyfriend got the vibes.
Good.
All right. They're named in the book. I'm not going to name them like the kid and the boyfriend and all this stuff. But it's discovered after the boy's genitals were found red and swollen and with an infection that David had been sexually abusing this child. Instead of the police, Jenny calls Bob. And Bob is like, let me talk to him and let me have our pastor talk to him.
No.
You should also know that
ministers are not meant to be dealing with criminal sexual conduct.
Listen, I even see it in our small town.
I know, but
it
that's
really
not your
drives me
job.
nuts.
Tell me where in your schooling to become I went to a small liberal arts college where there is actually a divinity school right there. That is not something that you are trained to do. Hold up. There are some trainings that you have to deal with it, but it's called reporting it.
Yeah, exactly.
You aren't to counsel it away without calling the police.
No. It still has to be reported to law enforcement.
Seminary, not divination, by the way. This is not Harry Potter. It is not divination. It was seminary.
That's
and
okay.
I apologize, but my mind was, I was angry. I'm angry now.
I know. I can feel it.
And if Bob's out there someplace, I'm sorry. I'm angry with you.
Yeah.
I am personally angry with you.
In 1992, this is how he wanted to handle it.
Okay.
And again, this is where I think he didn't know the full comprehension of his history, his brother's history. I'd like to know how they explained away his 15 years in prison for,
attempted murder.
Exactly. Of
kidnapping.
children. But anyway.
You should babysit.
Yep. And
Just
now,
like good with kids and napping.
And now you've been caught sexually abusing a little boy. And so hold on, as the big brother, I'm going to talk some sense into him, and I'm going to have our pastor talk to him. You should know that soon after arriving into town, David did join the Assembly of God Church and was allowed to sell his toys in the church basement. And he also was the Sunday school teacher. So Bob, I know, I see your face. I know.
No, you can't because it's covered up.
Well, I mean, I see your gestures and your eyeballs. I'm literally reading your mind.
I'm
also.
Literally have my hands over my mouth to keep myself from talking.
So Bob tells the boy's mother, let's have the good pastor, Pastor Dahl, D-A-H-L, talk some sense into him, and she agrees. So the bastard. Well,
oh my God.
The pastor. Excuse
Charnell.
my Freudian slip. Sorry. I'm words are hard. I've been at this for 3 hours.
Oh my God.
So the pastor does tell him, okay, you cannot do Sunday school anymore, but you can still sell your toys in the basement.
Supervised?
I have no idea about that. I don't know that information. Well, due to the phone bills and long distance calls, the pastor makes the call to the police instead of the mom. Pastor Dahl is like, we got to report this to the police. And the mom is like, I actually don't have enough money to do that because it would be long distance for me. Can you do this? So he does.
I kind of like this pastor.
Well, I mean, that is
He did what he was supposed to.
Exactly. Bob also reassured Mom, Jenny, that his brother would get counseling. Okay.
In prison, where he belongs.
The police officer assigned to the case, he did an interview with the child. The child told the story, all right? And he said that the reason that he let it go on for so long, the child, is because he likes David and he didn't want David to go to jail. That's very normal.
Yeah, super normal.
So he's arrested January 19th, 1994.
Okay. The year before I graduated from high school.
Yes, but also like a long time after this had been, the abuse started in 1992.
92.
Yep. He started babysitting the child in 1992. It did take the child quite some time to actually disclose and have those issues. Right. So here we are. He's arrested and he tells the police that he blacked out and doesn't remember any of it.
All those years? You blacked out for all those years?
He has no idea. The child's mother, Jenny, wrote the court and said that she wished that he would receive probation and counseling, but she doesn't want her child to have to testify. He was evaluated, but since everything he told them was a lie, he was diagnosed with, this is going to piss you off, he was diagnosed with PTSD from the sexual assault that he had endured when he was 10 years old in the woods.
That didn't happen.
That never happened.
You have PTSD from the story you made up in your head.
Yep. And that's why you sexually assaulted this 8-year-old boy. Okay.
Who is not your first victim?
No.
And where is all that in the report? Where are all his priors?
They don't have that information from Massachusetts. The states are not talking.
They're not talking. And what's starting to bother me is that as we keep saying things like, well, this is the 70s, this is the 80s, this is the 90s, this is the later the mid 90s.
Yeah, it's 1994
They're
now.
fucking talking now,
talk.
Charnell.
Yeah.
They can talk.
Well, this is interesting, Megan. He sat waiting for a trial from being arrested January 19th, 1994 until May 29th, 1996. So 2 years.
That's not shocking.
No, 2 years and 4 months after his arrest, and he could not post bond because it was so high. They did put the bond high.
Good.
So what they ended up doing is doing a deferred prosecution agreement, but nothing was ever done with this agreement. So his public defender saw the opportunity to file for a lack of a speedy trial and to have the charges dismissed, and so they were. Yep. Someone screwed up big time, and now it's 1996, and he's free. I mean, take a little grain of happiness that he did spend 2 years and 4 months there making friends. There was a lot of
But it got dismissed for a constitutional violation.
There was a lot of disgusting stories, by the way, about him having sex with his inmates and disgustingness. Like he
during
learned,
this time that he's lodged.
He learned all about Montana, and he was roomed with, or shall we say, celled with other pedophiles in the area, and it does nothing but really like get him in the game. Okay. Once he's on the outside,
he was having a really great sexual experience while he was incarcerated.
Yeah, and the reason there's so many stories about it available is because they didn't attempt to hide it at all. So the guards were traumatized from what they witnessed, for sure.
Yeah, they're walking by seeing spray them down or something.
Well, right. And sometimes there was even like multiple of them. It was just weird how the universe brought all of these men together. Truly. All right. So what he starts doing is helping kids on and off the bus, bringing them treats and toys each day.
Wait, this is after he gets released?
This is after.
There's still no order. Oh my God.
No. He's making his rounds to different schools, and he would even like parole. This is so awful. He would even parole some of the schools as a volunteer police officer in his police uniform. They just walked into into these buildings, and no one questioned why he was there.
School.
Yes. Yep. Talking to kids, talking to adults, being as friendly as ever. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. Teachers thought that he was a volunteer. They didn't question this because they thought that he was a volunteer. Everyone was just kind of like, "Oh, I think he's supposed to be here," and that's how that happens. So when he was in jail, I told you he met some people. He met another pedophile named Doc. They became best friends. They bonded over their love of sexually abusing little boys.
Oh.
So Doc, who in his game was that he would like to take in like downtrodden boys of the street and give them a meal and a warm bed. And all he wanted in return was love.
Yeah. Love
That
as in
is-
physical.
Yep. That's
Child
his-
molestation.
Yes, that's his hook, line, and sinker. And he wanted to teach David how to evolve in his pedophilia. And literally, they start meeting at a stereotypical like seedy bar in town called the Hi Ho
Oh, for fuck's sake.
to discuss how they could groom boys. Doc also told everyone in Great Falls that he had a PhD and he would dress the part just like David would dress in his police getup. Isn't that interesting? Oh my gosh, I just realized I put in my notes. Fucking wild how the universe brought these two together.
Right?
I said it earlier. Like, oh, I guess I must have been thinking it when I was writing these notes too.
I'm at a loss.
So Doc considered himself a champion of the men who loved boys and was a member of NAMBLA, Nambala, which is an organization created in 1979 of pedophiles who want to normalize men loving boys.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Yes, I saw a SVU on this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Legit.
It's a real thing.
It is.
Mhm. I know. Anyway, they take up a cause. So what's interesting is that these two were actually at Bridgewater together, but they didn't meet at that time. And they didn't realize that they were locked up, or that they were at Bridgewater together until they were locked up together in Montana. Isn't that fucking wild?
It is.
So what I'm getting at here is that David was a frequent at Doc's house where they lured boys off the streets to sexually groom and abuse them. And also used one another for their own sexual favors as well, all while, retailing all the boys that they knew and had abused. Okay, so they're
This is
like,
a sex trafficking, right?
It is, and they're just loving every moment of it. Later during interviews, Doc said that strangulation always came up as a topic of hot interest for David. As his gross life continues, in 1995, he starts working at, that is not correct. My apologies, because he wasn't released until 1996. When he gets out, 1996, that was a typo. Okay. He starts working at Hardee's. And if you look this case up, you're going to see
fast food joint.
Yeah, you're going to see headlines with information like Hardee's employee murdering kids and stuff like that. But this started way before he actually started at Hardee's, his crimes. While working at Hardee's, he meets a woman named Pam. They end up bonding over religion.
Okay.
Pam practices Santeria, or the
Santeria.
The way, maybe, yeah. Sorry.
It is.
What did I say? I have
Santeria. They probably spelled it wrong.
I spelled it wrong in this paragraph, and then in the next one, it is spelled correctly.
Yep. Okay. But he's a Christian Jew.
Yes.
A Jewish Christian?
She's teaching him the way of the saints.
Okay.
Yep. Others call it voodoo, things like that. But he would question her for hours about, if she sacrificed.
It's Catholic based.
Yeah. Well, what he really wants to know is, do you sacrifice animals as part of your rituals? Because she said that she was a high priestess of this religion.
Right. My God, it's like my Clementine Barnabette case.
It is. It is a bit. But he really isn't interested in the religion itself.
He's interested in the kids.
He wants to know the gruesomeness. Like, are you sacrificing babies? Are you sacrificing animals? Anyway, the two start dating. And Pam...
Sounds like a recipe for love.
Pam was described as an overweight woman who never stopped talking. That was not my description of her, people.
That's okay. I'm starting to take it personally.
Someone else's description. Megan, I'm starting to take it personal. Yeah, so she made some observations about the family. First, she and David never touched and they never had sex, even though they were dating. Sometimes they would sleep in the same bed, but he would tell her to stay on her own side. Pam did not like Bob. She felt like Bob tried to control everyone's life, and his wife Jill especially. And whenever
they're all living in his house,
his rental, yeah. Whenever she and David would have dinner with Bob and Jill, Tyra was always there, and Jill and Bob would argue. Pam would tell David to slow down eating, and Tyra would interject and tell her to leave him alone because this is how he always ate. Can you picture this?
Mama
jumping in. Don't tell him how to eat when she's like, whoa, you should really slow down. Don't tell him how to eat. This is how he's always ate. Doesn't mean it's right, Tyra. Anyway.
It's worked out real well for him, Tyra.
Yeah. So she started
He's the picture of health.
She started to notice that he would never touch her, but he would always be touching and interacting with little boys every chance he got. At work, he would go sit with the mothers who brought their kids in and touch them playfully and bring them extra toys. The manager eventually intervened and told him to stay away from the kids because some parents had complained.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's me. I'm the parent.
David.
And also, I would have been arrested.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like that. This is not okay.
Yeah, that's right. I'm sitting here as a judicial official telling you I would have been arrested for assault if someone did that to my child.
If an employee of the restaurant you're eating at came and sat down and started touching your child. No. So, and he only preyed on single mothers, by the way.
Okay.
He would never approach a child that was with a father or had a dual parenting. Okay. So,
got it.
He told Pam when he was like, "Oh, I can't talk to the kids anymore because this is what the manager said they'd complained." He told Pam that he'd shoved the manager into the freezer to shut him up.
What?
Yeah, that didn't happen.
He made that up too. One of his delusions.
Yeah.
Heroic delusions.
Yeah. He proposed to Pam in an uneventful way, and when Tyra offered to pay for the wedding dress, David said no, the bride is supposed to pay for it. Then he asked his mother for the money that she was going to give Pam for the dress, and he was pissed when his mom refused, saying that he needed it to buy more antique toys for the kids. She's like, "No, I offered the money for the wedding dress. And you won't let me use it for the money dress." Right. Pam also noticed the way that David obsessively watched cartoons all day long and talked to the characters like he was a part of the show. She also took note that after the local disappearance of a boy named Zachary Ramsey, he was even more touchy with little boys and told her that someone had probably cut him up into a million pieces and spread him out in the woods where he would never be found.
What?
Let me tell you a little bit about this. February 6th, 1996, a 10-year-old boy named Zach Ramsey was 4'6", weighed 85 pounds, with dark hair, dark complexion, and lived in Great Falls. He went missing and still has never been found. David is considered a suspect, but I actually am going to cover Zach's case on the next episode in full.
Okay.
Because I feel that he deserves his own episode, and we don't know for certain because he's still missing. I don't want his case getting lost within these two episodes. So I wanted to do his case in its own deep dive.
Awesome.
Okay. So, but just know that at the time that Zach went missing, Pam and him were engaged, and she recognized that he acted different. And that was the statement that he made.
Okay.
So anyway, it should be noted that between January 26th and February 16th, which Zach went missing February 6th. So right in this time, Tyra was gone. She was in Massachusetts for her sister's funeral.
Okay. Her daughter still lives in Mass, right?
I think that Lois does. I'm not sure. She's not really a big part of. I don't know that she wanted to be a big part of the interviews in this. During this time, David kept entirely to himself. And it was February 6th that Zach went missing. Pam was not allowed in his apartment and would not talk to her. When he did throw open the door, he would scream at her to leave him alone. This is his fiance, remember.
And she's like cool?
Well, I don't think that Pam had the best self-esteem.
I wouldn't think so.
Possibly cognitively impaired.
I was just going to say, she missing some screws there?
Maybe. He showed back up again February 17th, the day after his mom returned to Massachusetts. In spring 1996, Pam opened some of David's mail. There were 3 yearbooks from Great Falls of kids that he does not know. Pam questioned him about this, and he became enraged that she was going through his things. He also just randomly was like talking to, I guess like residents. I don't know. There was this one woman whose house burnt down, and he went to go give her son a toy, and he made mention during that exchange that, that kid Zach Ramsey, they'll never find his body. It's gone. So she's just like doing these things. He's just going around doing these things. He started doing puppet shows for kids in one of Bob's garages. And then he would even shelter himself in there and not speak to his mother for weeks at a time. He also started...
Oh, yeah, he was playing with his puppet in there.
Uh-huh. No, he was trafficking downtrodden teens off the street.
With a puppet show.
Mm-hmm. He also started to do antique road shows, so to speak, all on his own for long periods of time. So, like I said, there's a lot of time that he went unaccounted for throughout his life.
Apparently.
July 1997, he decides it's time for him to get his own place finally.
With his fiance?
Hold on. It's coming. Tyra decided that he could give it a try. He must be special to the Lord if the Dark Lord always worked so hard to corrupt her son.
The Dark Lord.
Uh-huh. That'd be the devil.
Yeah, I'm aware.
Oh, you've met him? Yeah.
I think we all just did.
Yeah. Yeah. So she's like, okay. And she's buying into all of this. He is God's special child. Yeah. So in August 1997, Pam gets evicted from her apartment because the smell of candles and the screaming of animals had gotten too many complaints by the neighbors.
I don't practice Santa.
So Tyra and
I do not own the rights to that music.
Yeah, it was a classic rendition of it. Tyra and Pam think that this is the perfect time for them to start living together.
Of course it is. When homelessness becomes an issue, that is always the time.
Tyra and Pam are both like, I know. Because in Tyra's eyes, it's not a sin because they're engaged.
Sure.
LOL.
Like we're worried that that's the biggest sin your kid has committed so far, Tyra.
Mm-hmm. So in September, he does finally agree and he lets Pam move in. But he has his own bedroom and he locks the door and anytime that he leaves and he tells her that she's not allowed in it. Because, sin and all. Then something even more bizarre happens.
Really?
Yes. I know. I don't even.
Her look. She's actually just given up. She's like, I know. Let me get this out.
It's so bad. At the antique mall, David meets a woman named Sherry Dietrich. She was on her way to Walla Walla, Washington.
I love that.
I love that I finally got to say it on the podcast, where she had a kid there. So she was down on her luck and homeless. They talked for a long time, and David invited her to live with him and Pam.
So sweet.
Just like that.
Pam is going to be super excited.
Pam has been engaged to him for over a year and just moved in. But this woman, this Sherry, met one day. Hey, you want to come live with us? So Pam arrives home to Sherry answering her door, inviting her in her own place, and they've never met.
I love this.
Pam told David...
It's the sex offender version of Three's Company.
Yeah, basically. Pam told David she's not okay with this.
No.
And David...
Hey, asshole.
And David's like, if you don't like it, you can leave. Yeah. So they get into a fight.
David doesn't want to be engaged.
No, of course not. He doesn't even like women, for crying out loud. So
Adult women.
No, right.
Adults in general.
Anything. Yeah, he likes little boys. That's it. So they get into a fight that ends with Pam sobbing in the parking lot. After David drove away, she was begging him not to leave her. Like I said, she's got some self-esteem things going on, girl. She eventually noticed that it was raining, so she aimlessly picks herself up, walks across the street to the hospital that was across the street. And she ended up falling asleep in a patient's room in a chair. And she woke up to a nurse telling her that visiting hours were over. There was a patient in the room.
Well, at least they got some company that day.
I was just picturing this man in a coma and she's just sitting there snoring.
Yep, exactly.
So when David returned, Sherry was still at the apartment. And of course, David told her, sit down at the table with me. I want to talk to you about a kid that went missing last year. His name is Zach Ramsey. Sherry had never heard of Zach. And I'm going to give you details of this conversation in the Zach Ramsey case that I'm covering next. But let's just say that he tells her when he tells her, David, it like convinces her that David is not right and had something to do with this child's disappearance.
Okay.
So
I like your instinct, Sherry.
Yeah.
Shetty.
After moving in, Sherry noticed that every time David made his special spaghetti sauce for his church friends and neighbors, as he often did, he would defrost meat in the microwave, and it always smelled so foul that it nearly made her sick.
You bitch.
I buried the lead.
You did. There's fucking cannibalism.
Do you want to know what the name of the books are now?
Yeah.
Eat the Evidence.
Okay.
That's why I didn't tell you before. So here we are.
Give me the evidence.
Anybody else not wanting spaghetti anytime soon?
That's what I was going to make tonight.
I know. I was actually feeling pasta myself, but I forgot about this particular
Gonna make
part.
some pierogies and cabbage.
Cabbage. Oh my God, cabbage smells so disgusting.
I love it though.
Me too, but it does
It'll cover the odor of whatever this is in my soul.
Good call. All right. So when Sherry's like, dude, that stinks. He's like, you know what? You need to mind your own business if you don't like the smell. Mm-hmm.
So he disappears for some long periods of time,
Mm-hmm.
and he comes back with a lot of ground meat.
Yeah. Oh, this is good too. Sherry sees him reading the school lunch menu.
No.
And he claims that he's a chef and he just wants to make sure that the school kids are getting a balanced diet.
Now he's a chef?
Now remember, he fries chicken at Hardee's.
Okay.
He is a chef.
You know what? They pay good money now.
Yeah. Well, Sherry gets nosy. So she breaks into his bedroom one day.
I love it.
The smell was so much worse in there. She opens the closet and a shoe hit her on top of the head. So she went to go put it back and she discovers gloves covered in dirt and blood. She also sees an oily rope tied in a figure 8 in a piece of plywood with stab marks and blood. So she's scared now. She decides to leave and she notices a police badge on the dresser.
Yeah.
Now, the problem with this is that a couple of weeks earlier, when David wanted to tell her about the missing child, Zach Ramsey, he told her an elaborate story that I'm going to detail for you in that episode about how there was a pedophile on the loose posing as a police officer.
Yeah, me, him, he was the guy.
Right. And he
I have to tell you a story about a bad guy I know.
And he told her
Asking
that
for a friend.
this police officer picked Zach up.
Okay.
Mm-hmm, and now she's seeing this badge.
Yeah.
So Pam, who did come move back into the apartment.
Because she's that.
Because she's homeless.
Desperate.
Yeah. So Sherry shows Pam the next day and some boys' clothing that she found in that closet. Pam can't hardly believe all of this.
Really? Can't you? Can't you, Pam?
Come on, Pam. Pam. He arrives home early, startling them, and basically Sherry continues to live with him for a few more days before she decides that it's time for her to pack up and
Well,
move
you got to
on.
do this calmly. Like, I have no problem with anything that I saw. It's no big deal. But then
On the
I'm
inside, you're
I'm
screaming.
starting to look for another place. And dude, I would have left immediately.
Mhm. Yes, but we're two cognitively rational people.
Well, yeah, that's true.
So
I mean, most days.
at this time, right. I mean, in this moment, right
Currently.
now, yeah. So he goes on a road trip for a night, and a 14-year-old girl who was often mistaken for a boy went missing on her bike.
That sounds eerily familiar.
Mm-hmm. Sherry noted that David was in a better mood when he arrived back home from his road trip. He took his mom's car because she was out of town for a family wedding that she and Bob attended that Dave was not invited to. And this pissed him off, by the way, that he was not invited. Turns out the rest of the family
He's not
had
coming.
boundaries up with David.
Well, because he acted so well at the funeral of his father
Right,
20 years
exactly.
ago.
All right. So what ends up happening is he has, and Sherry finds this, hundreds of photos of kids that he cut out their heads and put them in baseball card binders and stared at them for hours.
But just their heads.
Just their heads. And
That
Pam
sucks
and
because you
Sherry
look for
both-
child sexually abusive material, and some people call it child pornography, and there's nothing illegal about cutting kids' heads out.
No.
I mean, human
And
heads, but out of magazines.
Yes, and that's what he what he
Yeah,
had done.
he's-
That's what he was doing with
like
those
he's-
yearbooks.
Yeah, he's masturbating to like the J.C. Penney catalog.
Yep. He also was taking photos, sending them to Massachusetts to be developed and having them mailed back to him. Yep.
Okay.
So he had all of those too.
The days before Shutterfly.
Now here's what's really interesting. You want to know how he ends up throwing Sherry out of the apartment?
Please tell me.
He finds her tarot cards. Her and Pam are sitting one day having a chit chat, And in her luggage, she had tarot cards. She was going to get them out and do a fun reading for Pam. And he was like, that is the devil's work.
He knows you practice Santeria when you let her live.
That's Pam.
Oh, Sherry. Oh, so Pam's allowed to be pagan.
Oh, sorry. The girls wanted to say hello, apparently.
Pam's allowed to be pagan, but Sherry's not?
Sherry is not allowed to read tarot. No, not at all.
Okay. It's starting to rain.
So then, I think that's why the girls were barking. I bet they heard it.
Yep.
All right. So then, when David throws Sherry out, she calls the police. All right, because she had actually found Officer Buscelli's card left on his door the day that Zach Ramsey went missing.
So he was a person of interest.
He was.
They wanted to talk to him
right away, but he never he was never around, and he never responded, and he didn't even get that card actually because
all good defense attorney advice will be: do not, if you're guilty, respond to the police officer's card.
Exactly. So she does tell him the whole story of what David told her about the day that Zach went missing,
and what
about
she
this
saw?
Police officer, exactly what she saw in the home, all that. I will note that Belushi, that's the name of the officer Belushi.
I'm so happy right now.
He did request a search warrant after Zach went missing twice, but was denied both times.
Just no probable cause. How do you connect it?
Yeah.
Was this enough to get PC?
Well,
you're going to tell me in the next story.
Yeah, they actually thought that it sounded so crazy that they did not see the need to follow up with any of it.
Oh, that hurts.
And Sherry left town.
Yeah.
Yep. So anyway,
I'm not going to end up in the freezer smelling weird in the microwave.
No. After Sherry leaves, it gets real tumultuous for Pam and David. So she decides it's time for her to end their relationship. Okay. And plus, she'd also fallen in love with a man named Ron from church who actually slept with her, unlike David.
Okay.
So David told people that he dumped her because she wanted to have a 3-way with Sherry. Oh, and that's not true at all. He dumped her because she fell in love, or she dumped him. Excuse me. I botched
because she fell in love with somebody who wanted to be physically intimate with an adult woman.
Yes,
the shock,
exactly.
The horror.
And instead, he's like, "Yeah, I dumped her because she wanted to have a nasty 3-way with Sherry," which in itself should have been a red flag for another man to be like, "So your fiance wanted to bring another woman into your relationship and you ended it." Unbelievable.
Lucky.
Right. Some guys have all the luck. I did not mean to kill you with that.
You did. I've been doing good not coughing.
So David decided to start stalking her and to egg her car. Okay? Because he's pissed.
He does care enough that he's...
Well, it's ego. His ego is damaged.
Oh, okay.
Okay, he doesn't care enough, but his ego does. And so she moves in with Ron. And after they were living in a motel for like a week, and he did that stalking and whatnot. So then she moves in with Ron. And then at that point in time, he's done because now we've entered another man, right, that could potentially harm him. Because at the end of the day, he's nothing but a blob of weakness.
He didn't have the perfect victim anymore.
Yep. And I will say this about Pam, that her and Ron did not work out, and she went to Virginia Beach, where she had family, and she recalls that David was probably the love of her life because although he may have killed that boy, he at least didn't treat her like crap.
Okay.
So there's that.
That's sad.
Yep.
I'm very sad for you, Pam.
So now David takes a lover named Barry.
Oh, he realizes that he likes men.
Maybe
well,
women
he's known
aren't for
this
him.
Before.
Yep. He had no place to stay and was desperate. He even got Barry a job at Hardee's. Now, Barry later says the smell of rancid meat, what Barry assumed was deer meat, was hard for him to accept at first because he is not a hunter, and so he found the smell to be really offensive. Yep. And David just told him that was just deer meat, and he's like, I actually really find the smell refreshing. Mm-hmm. So then there is a graphic detailing of a sexual encounter that Barry had with David that I will not take us all through, but we're just going to know that he tied him up with a rope. He strangled him to the point of nearly murder during sex. And
this was not consensual.
well, it was. No, it was. But it concerned Barry.
Okay,
That this
it
was
crossed one of
happening.
his little lines in there someplace.
did.
Like, I gave you consent to do this, but now I
But
regret
not,
it.
Yep. Not bring me to the point of almost passing out and then, bringing me back. And also in that interview that he did make note of how disappointed of how small that David's penis was. So there's that.
He was disappointed in David's genitals.
He was. BB Nuts was
Just like
was
daddy
not
complex
pleasing.
again.
Mm-hmm. All right, so now it's Christmas 1998, and a family moves into the upstairs apartment. Her name, this family's name was, sorry, I had to stop because I actually thought it was a typo, but it's not. Lori Bigleggins, her children Roland Johnson and Stormy Ackerman, and her husband Gerald. Also, Lori's sister Tanya Bigleggins and Tanya's son Stanley all lived in a small 2-bedroom apartment above David.
Okay.
Yeah. I apologize because I just was like, wait, was that a typo? Because sometimes I have really stupid typos in here,
Right.
but no, that's her name. I imagine she's Native American in heritage. So Lori was 5 feet, 350 pounds. So it was difficult for her to move around comfortably. And so she allowed her kids to kind of run wild.
Mm-hmm.
Those were actually her words. And that they were often doing that.
Right.
Running wild. All right. They first noticed the smell coming from David's apartment, but they could not figure out where it was coming from. And the manager told her that the carpets probably just needed to be cleaned.
And David stinks.
Yeah, exactly. She first met David on the day that they moved in. He held the door for her and said that he was headed to his mother's for a big Christmas dinner, but he would help her move her things in if he needed when he returned. He was delighted to see her boys and even offered them some of his toys for a Christmas gift.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Lori was fond of the local casino where she could drink and smoke and play Keno. And Dad, Gerald worked nights at a refinery. David told her that he noticed they aren't home a lot and he offered to look after the boys. How generous.
Babysitter of the year.
Yeah. He told her that he was a manager at Hardee's and had a successful antique business and was involved in undercover police work that he was not allowed to talk about.
But that's why I sometimes have a badge.
Yeah. Lori's kids were, and sometimes why you see me coming and going in a police officer uniform from this apartment.
Covered in blood with dirty gloves.
Right.
Smelling like meat.
Now, Lori's kids were cognitively impaired and required special education classes.
Oh, God.
Something that David used to his advantage,
Yeah.
and of course started grooming the kids under the guise that he was giving them a friendly ear and life advice. The 3 boys were there all the time, which Barry did not like. They were obnoxious. They made messes. They were eating them out of house and home.
Mm-hmm.
Carrie, another woman, Carrie Wynn, lived next door to David's apartment, and she did not like David. She saw all the boys going and coming from all hours of the night in his apartment and heard things through the thin walls.
Oh.
But when her own son came to her and said that the fat man next door would not leave him alone, she had had enough. He had the ball. Sorry.
You had the ball?
No.
Just one?
He had been rolling a ball to him constantly, trying to get him to come into his apartment to play.
How old is this guy?
Her little boy, it didn't say.
Okay.
Yep. So her husband told David that he is too old to be playing around with kids and to leave his own kid alone. David bumped his fat chest into Mr. Martin and backed him into a brick wall, threatening him, and put like a thumb and forefinger on his throat and threatened to kill him if he ever comes near his kid again.
Good.
So that is what the husband did to
This is why
David.
he doesn't mess around with people that have spouses around.
Exactly. And he did leave that kid alone after that. Mr. Martin had been a sergeant in the Army and wasn't going to allow David to try and bully him, and David didn't stand a chance against him. The family did find a new place to live a couple of weeks later. They weren't going to stay there. Before leaving, Carrie Martin did try to warn Lori Bigleggins about David. She told her, and then Lori was like, "You've got him all wrong. He's a good man. He watches my kids all the time, and he even helps me pay my rent sometimes." Classic. So one day, Stanley's over at his apartment, and at David's apartment. And David put Stanley in a headlock and was rubbing his knuckles on top of his head really hard to the point of making the child cry. And then he releases him, but suddenly started to choke him.
Okay.
So Roland sees this, one of the other brothers. Whoops, just hit myself in the face with the microphone, so that's cool. It happens. So Roland interjects and gets David to stop. And David, after realizing he lost his composure, yells at the boys that it's time for them to go home. So Gerald was home, and Roland tells him what David had done to Stanley. He was furious. He went down to David's apartment, slamming his fists on the door. David wouldn't answer. When Lori got home, Gerald told her that the boys are never allowed to go over there again. There were marks on Stanley's neck from the choking incident. Lori said that Stanley must have been a really bad boy for such a nice guy like David to do something like that, and that the marks would go away in a couple of days, and he should have come and talked with her first before putting hands on her kids, but he must have been being naughty.
Okay.
So on October 13th, 1999, David was seen outside an elementary school for the third time in a week. He was wearing a dark blue jacket and a knit cap and was carrying 2 cans of pepper spray, a toy gun, and a badge. A school official finally fucking calls the police to report him.
Amazing.
So Officer Belushi and Attorney General charge David with impersonating a police officer.
Good.
And for carrying a concealed weapon.
Okay.
A judge approved a search warrant on December 15th, 1999 for impersonation objects in both Tyra's home and his apartment.
Okay.
Police found 2 coats, one dark blue and another with a toy badge in the pocket, a second toy badge, a stun gun, and a baseball cap reading security enforcement.
Okay. So they found the fruits of what they thought that they would.
Yep.
And probably other things also.
During the search, they also found a pulley on the ceiling in David's kitchen.
Yep.
2 albums with cutouts of children, a document about knots in bondage, and an article entitled Autoerotic Asphyxia.
Asphyxia. It's
Asphyxia.
hard.
It's so hard. I can't.
It's hard.
And we're 4 hours into recording today.
It was a terrible pun. It's just so bad.
I mean, but it just is what it is. So this is 4 years after Zach Ramsey went missing before they start looking into a possible connection more with David.
Please tell me they went and got a second search warrant.
Well,
or that this didn't come up as an issue, because when you have a search warrant to find things regarding to impersonate a police officer, but then you come in there and you start finding evidence of a kidnapping or a missing child, you really, really, really need to correct the search warrant.
Well, what they really start doing, they've got their search warrant for, the stuff.
They have the stuff that they have.
Found. Yeah. But they do start actually investigating, where they're able to determine that David had access to his mother's off-white 4-door 1978 Toyota Corolla the day that Zach disappeared, and that his mother and brother were out of town for a funeral. And later we will hear in Zach's case that there were witnesses that saw that same vehicle.
Okay,
in that area approaching him. It was also determined that David did not work on February 6th, 1996, nor on the days immediately after. So, 2 days later, Belushi was granted a second search warrant for any documents and photographic material.
Yes.
While searching his apartment, they found a list of 54 boys' names the list was titled Lake Webster.
Really?
That's back in Massachusetts.
It is.
Which were later identified as real boys from David's time in Massachusetts.
That had been missing, or just real boys that existed?
Real boys that existed, 3 of whom David was convicted of abducting.
Okay.
In the 1970s. Right. And he had their names and then like statements behind them. And they did on this list find the name Zachary Ramsey, followed by the word died. All right. Furthermore, there were dozens of newspapers clippings that were found in his apartment following the Ramsey case, as well as 3,500 photographs of children and underdeveloped films containing sexual images of David, and 3 unidentified boys were also recovered. Authorities
there was child sexual abusive material.
Absolutely. Okay. Authorities also found a pulley on which a rope, cord, or chain could be connected, and the pulley was attached to the ceiling in his kitchen, as I mentioned. Sorry, that was repetitive.
Those are the times that people wouldn't be allowed in his house because he was doing some butchery.
Yeah, exactly. Remember Sherry, the former roommate?
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is where she's now finally contacted by the police, and she tells of how she described finding clothes in his apartment, which appeared to match those of what Zach Ramsey was wearing and the day that he disappeared, in addition to bloody gloves. When they interview Pam, she informs them that David sometimes spontaneously brought up the boy, Zach, in conversations, once a few days before he disappeared, and another time when he said that Ramsey would never be found because he had been chopped up and parts scattered in different places. Investigators also found notebooks with seemingly arbitrary characters which were believed to be coded writing. With the help of the FBI and after months of effort, the writing was decoded in the notebooks where David was described torturing and eating children. There was also like macabre recipes involving children's body parts.
And he wrote this.
Mm-hmm. This was his own special code writing. After examining the Lake Webster list, Great Falls Police Sergeant John Cameron and FBI agents James Wilson discovered that 2 of the names were those of youngsters who resided in the apartment directly above David's current place in Montana, Stanley and Roland.
So they were listed as well.
They were on the list, yep. Even though they were on the Lake Webster list, they were still on the list.
Yeah, but so was Zach.
Mm-hmm. He was.
So he's adding to his list.
Yep. Then the 2 youngsters were recognized in pictures taken using disposable cameras that were found during the searches. He
was grooming and abusing them.
Well, they were images of them being abused.
Okay.
So David's lying on his bed naked with his penis showing in various stages of erection, if that's what we can call it. Erection's a very strong word. And this is where
for his micro penis.
Those pictures are in the book, and you have no warning that they're coming. So I just want you to know that.
Oh,
that
you got to see those with no warning also. Uh-huh. They didn't put the images of child sexual.
No, God, no.
Okay.
The image was just of David lying on his side and having
But I wonder how he feels like to be victimized by having his adult photography placed on there.
Well, there's belief that in the various pictures that they found, some they believe Zach actually took of him too. Really? Not just the 2 boys that lived upstairs, but also Zach. Mm-hmm. His hand can be seen in one of the pictures. So we get to it in the next episode. I know. I'm doing it as its own episode. It's not like a 3-parter.
Okay.
Like Zach's episode is his own episode, just so you know. I don't want him tied,
sure,
being a part of these. So,
it is. You've made it for us.
I mean, it is, yes, but I want him on a standalone episode.
See.
One of the boys acknowledged that David had sexually molested him. Okay, when they were. So Mrs. Big Leggins,
yep.
One of her children. Additionally, he disclosed information about how David had also sexually assaulted his cousin, which was corroborated as well. Basically, what would happen is anytime that they would stay over at his place, he,
perped on him every time.
Sure did. So on July 5th, 2000, Montana police charged David with kidnapping and sexual assault, as well as kidnapping and sexual assault of 3 other boys, and the murder of Zach Ramsey while David was held at the Cascade County Jail in Great Falls. He pled innocent to all charges. All right. Prosecutors announced that they would be seeking the death penalty. He ultimately ends up getting prosecuted for the abduction and molestation of 3 boys and convicted of kidnapping, aggravated assault, and sexual assault, including charges that he had tortured one of the boys and hung him from the ceiling. Okay.
This is one of the neighbor boys, the upstairs boys.
Yes, and I'm not naming victims here. There were minors, and I'm not going into these. These are all the things that they found in the investigation. Okay. Here's the thing. Zach Ramsey's mother was swayed by David's defense team to testify for them that she believed her son was still alive. Let me say that again.
Yeah.
Zach Ramsey's mother was swayed by David's defense team to testify for them that she believed her son was still alive, which led jurors not to convict David for Zach's murder.
There's no body.
Although they were not at all convinced that he was not an extreme child predator and dangerous sexual deviant. We will get into why she believes that her son is still alive in the next time. Yeah.
Just as a mom.
Mm-hmm. So during his trial, 36-year-old Mary Patrone recognized him as the man who had abducted and assaulted her by dressing as a police officer in 1974. But the statute of limitations had expired and he could not be charged with a crime. Ultimately, you guys, he was sentenced to 130 years in prison and he maintained his innocence up until his death. So,
how'd he die?
He died in prison very uneventfully. How did I put it?
Fine. Like naturally or something?
No. It was a medical, like I think he had a heart thing or something.
Yeah,
I do get to it. I do get to it, but I wanted to kind of tell you there's more here.
Okay.
Montana authorities were unaware of David's criminal record in Massachusetts. And it was actually by activists campaigning to force former sex offenders to register that in December 2004, the Montana Supreme Court turned down David's appeals and upheld the 130-year prison sentence. But he was found unresponsive in his prison cell on the morning of April 13th, 2008. He had been in poor health. His postmortem found significant levels of LDL in his arteries. I don't know.
It's the bad cholesterol.
Yeah, well, and he had a heart attack that was determined to be his cause of death. That's what I thought it was. But during one of the searches at his house in Great Falls, authorities dug up portions of the garage and sifted through nearly 2 tons of dirt, which they found 21 fragments of human bones in.
Shocking.
Yeah. Although it was eventually determined that the bones were that of an unidentified African-American child, a boy believed between the ages of 8 and 13, DNA analysis showed that the bones were not that of Zach Ramsey, and the DNA sample did not match the human hair found in Ramsey's kitchen.
He said Zach was scattered all over, though. Mm-hmm. This is a different victim.
Sure is. When investigators decided that they wanted to examine the sewer pipes beneath the house in which David had previously resided, they were told by the owner that the pipes had all been replaced after David moved out because they were getting so terribly clogged.
This is like my guy in Canada.
I know, it reminded me of
the fat bastard shoving flesh.
Yes.
Flesh in the pipes was the title of that episode.
David is still widely believed to have been responsible and is also suspected to have committed additional homicides in Montana because of the findings made in his residence. Evidence shows that he frequently traveled to Arkansas, Colorado, Florida, Massachusetts, Wyoming, Michigan, and Washington.
Son bitch.
He was also investigated for possible crimes in Alberta and Saskatchewan, Canada, where he lived at times during the 1990s, like where he would go and visit, but police found no links to him in any of those unsolved cases.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
Wow.
There's a lot of potential kids that are missing, and the police have been able to determine he was in that area at the time, just so you know. Yeah. And that is the disgusting case.
That is a hell of a case, Charnell. Like,
right?
I'm kind of at a loss. Like, I'm waiting for more, but I don't want there to be more.
No.
But
the judge did what the judge needed to do with putting him away for 130 years. After, searching his home, finding all that child pornography.
It's just one of these cases where there's so many more victims and there's all these unsolved cases.
And we will never know. And finding the recipes.
And he died.
finding the recipes of him, with the cooking.
Yeah.
We know that he had from early in childhood a taste for human flesh.
Was there anything in his writings about his killings and whether they were religious based or not? I mean, we know that he was God's called chosen one.
There was scripture everywhere. Honestly, it was like manic. Like none of that ever really made sense, but there wasn't anything like specific that I could find in that regard. That it is just very, very, very highly probable that he butchered his victims and packaged the meat and fed them to his entire church congregation several times a week when he made them spaghetti dinners and all these different types of dinners, because the smell was just awful that people, the whole time Pam and Sherry lived there, he would defrost meat.
Maybe it's just us because we're used to it, but when I cook venison, when I cook deer meat, it doesn't smell bad.
No.
It has a slightly sweeter smell because it's game, but it doesn't smell bad.
Well, I will point this out. It was noted that Pam had serious sinus issues. She could hardly smell at all.
So Pam wasn't noticing.
No, so she stayed in the home for over a year, not even realizing that it smelled that horrible, whereas Cherie was like, whoa. Or Sherry, excuse me, not Sherry. Sherry.
I did that.
Yeah. Well, it is it could go either way. I might be mispronouncing it. It could be Sherry.
It's probably Sherry. But I'm going, I got to pull out the Cajun every once in a while. It's my favorite place.
That's just like, in all likelihood, he ate his victims and...
oh my God, I don't even know what you did to me right now. You brought me a pedophile, murderer, cannibal.
With so many other things thrown in.
Sunday school teacher.
Right. Officer, impersonator.
Flea market. I don't even know, Charnell. Wow.
I know.
Are you going to bathe me? I don't know if our listeners, do you want me to analyze this anymore? It's pretty straightforward. There's nothing else for me to even give on. This guy's a sick fucker, and I think he might be one of the worst ones you've ever brought me.
I told you. Did I not say? I mean, in the 2 years of doing this podcast, I
didn't think it was going to get grosser than my flesh in the pipes, but
nope,
I think
it's pretty gross.
Yeah. Oh my God, we haven't awarded the trophy. Well, that's for brain baths.
And we have BB nuts on top of it. I mean, this case has got it all. I just really like that nickname that his dad gave him. I told you. Do you guys understand now at the end of 4 hours nearly of listening why I was okay with calling an infant BB nuts and saying he was a disgusting, right from birth.
You couldn't even call him a baby, Charnell.
No, I couldn't. No, because he wasn't in my eyes. And then this is why. Okay. And after the fact, so Bob does come forward and gives information of saying, listen, now in hindsight, you know what? I realized why it's not in here.
It's in the next one.
In the next. Yeah, it's in Zach's case.
Well, let's tune into Zach's case.
See, and so's the information about Bob coming over.
Perfect. So now bathe me. Please, for the love of Christ, bathe me.
Okay, I will. So this is a police force. We follow that one police officer.
Lake PD.
Yes, the South Lake PD, and we love them. So there is one in Michigan.
Is it Cass or...
It's Bath.
Bath. It's Bath. I love Bath.
And so I wanted... it was recently April 20th, 4/20. Okay.
4/20.
And they put...
I saw this, but please spare me.
Okay.
Because I follow them.
Oh, okay. Wonderful. Well, for the people that aren't in Michigan and don't follow this police department, we have to let them know what they put out on 4/20 as their public service announcement. It says, "Time to be blunt. It's past the midweek and we've made it to another one of our Thursdays. We'd like to say we're excited for the weekend too. But like a dope, I picked up an extra work session for promo cash. So while I'm stuck having to buzz around the township, hopefully you all get to enjoy some family time, even with Dad and his chronic back pain, or Aunt Mary and her
glaucoma.
Aunt Mary and her fatty little dog Roach.
Oh God!
Be careful around Roach. He will steal food and you won't notice that Nugget is gone until it's too late. Or he may lick your face and dog spit is just sticky icky. I also recommend doing something healthy, like grabbing some green and making a delicious salad. Just check the expiration date. Wouldn't want to grab a leaf so bad it's basically the devil's lettuce, because man, that is bad. Or get some fruit from that new service that delivers right to the door. Pineapple Express, I think it's called.
Yep.
Well, I would like to be hanging out at home. I know the grass is always greener on the other side, and being here is some of the fine stuff. If you have any issues, give us a call, and I'll try to come hash out your problems or refer you to someone that can help. Well, as my mom used to say, you gotta poo or get off the pot, excuse me. So I guess I should finish this post and then make like a tree and get out of here. Oh, and before I forget, as we usually remind you to do on today's date, make sure to wish Carmen Electra a happy birthday. It's literally the only notable thing about today. So fire one up, and by that I mean a stove, because Carmen deserves a cake that's well baked.
Jesus.
So I thought
I loved
that
it.
was funny.
Yep. For those of you out there who got half of those references, I hope you all didn't eat the entire contents of your refrigerator.
Right.
I'm losing it again.
Oh,
So,
poor Megan.
I know. It's okay. I've made it quite a ways through. I love Bath, and I follow that. So what was funny, Charnell, is that other things come up on your Facebook feed when you're looking at those, including memories from many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So one of my memories came up after I read that on 420, and it was from probably 13 years ago when I still worked at the prosecutor's office, and marijuana was not legal in the state of Michigan.
Right.
And my post, which I put right out there for everyone to see, said, "Happy 420. In honor of 420 today, I'm going to authorize every drug-related warrant on my desk. I hope you all enjoy your night in jail. Happy 420."
Oh,
and
good Lord.
I've got friends under there going, "You're a dick," and other friends under there going, "Woohoo, you go get them." And yeah, so it was
That's funny.
That's what made me know for sure that I had read that Bath one, because I recall my memories coming up too.
Right.
And just looking back at self, of 13 years ago, going, why are you doing? Why did you post that?
Because back then you only had 158 friends on Facebook.
Probably,
like it wasn't,
and no followers,
Yeah,
and nobody
like
gave a shit about me.
Just one of those things that now I know. I think that I read my memories, and sometimes I'm like, why?
Why did you do that?
Why did past Charnell think that the world needed to see that?
I know.
Because future Charnell is embarrassed.
Right.
Oh, God. All right. Well, follow us on social media, please. Yes. If you'd like to join Patreon, do so. Patreon.com/Crime Curious, or hit the link in the show notes. And in the meantime, we hope that you
keep it curious
and keep listening.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.